They say family defines you. But what if the only thing your family ever gave you was proof that you never mattered? My name is Ethan Hale, and 3 months ago I was just another man chasing borrowed dreams, a fiancé, a steady job, a small apartment, and a hope that someday I'd finally make my parents proud. But that hope died the day I opened my father's will. My younger brother, Caleb, inherited a mansion in New York worth over $800,000. Marble floors, lake views, the kind of place people post on real estate magazines. And me, I got a rotting wooden cabin in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. That was the day everything I believed about love, family, and worth came crashing down. When the lawyer read out the will, the room went silent, except for the faint hum of Caleb's satisfied laugh. He didn't even try to hide it. He turned to me, hand on my shoulder, that fake sympathy in his eyes. "Guess Dad always believed in me," he said. That smile, that arrogant, self-assured smirk burned into my mind. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. Why the son who worked in the shadows, who never gave up, was rewarded with a shack, while the golden boy got the empire. But my father wasn't there to answer. He was already gone, and maybe that was the cruelest part, dying before explaining why one son mattered more than the other. That night, when I told my fiancée, Rachel, she didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She exploded. "A cabin? Are you serious, Ethan? Caleb gets a mansion, and you get a pile of wood in the woods?" Her voice shook the walls. "You are a pathetic loser. You always have been." I stood frozen, every word stabbed deeper. She tore the engagement ring off her finger and threw it on the table. "I am not wasting my life on someone who will never amount to anything." Then the door slammed. The sound echoed long after she was gone. I stood there in silence, staring at that ring, the metal glinting under the dull kitchen light. That was it. In 1 week, I lost everything. My parents, my brother's respect, the woman I loved, and yet something inside me refused to die. For days, I carried that crumpled cabin deed in my pocket, pulling it out like it held the answer to a question I didn't want to ask. Was this my father's final joke? Or was there something I wasn't seeing? One night, I sat in my dim apartment, the city's noise pulsing beyond the window, and I realized something. If that cabin was all I was worth to them, I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I bought a one-way ticket to Alaska. The plane was small, barely holding a dozen passengers, and rattled every time the wind hit. Through the window, I watched endless stretches of white, mountains, frozen rivers, forests that looked like they belonged to another planet. The silence up there was almost sacred. It made me wonder if my father had chosen Alaska for a reason. When the plane touched down, the air hit me like ice, sharp, clean, unforgiving. I could see my breath hanging in the air like smoke. A local driver I'd arranged picked me up in an old truck that groaned with every turn. We drove for hours down winding, icy roads, through forests that swallowed the sunlight. Every mile, I felt the world I knew slipping away, the noise, the people, the judgment. And then, at the end of a snow-covered trail, the driver stopped. He pointed ahead. "That's as far as I can take you," he said. "Cabin's about a mile up that way." I thanked him, grabbed my bag, and stepped into the wilderness. The snow crunched beneath my boots. The forest was silent. Not peaceful, but heavy, as if the air itself was listening. Branches cracked in the distance. The wind whispered through the trees. I kept walking until, finally, I saw it. The cabin, if you could even call it that. The roof sagged inward, one window shattered, the walls blackened with rot. The porch leaned like it was ready to collapse under its own weight. I laughed. One short, bitter sound. Of course. Of course this was my inheritance. I dropped my bag and pushed the door open. The hinges screamed. Inside, dust floated in the air like ghosts. Broken furniture littered the floor, a chair with one leg missing. A table split down the middle. The smell. A mix of mold, damp wood, and something older. Something forgotten. "This is what they thought of me," I whispered. "This is all I'm worth." I wanted to burn it down, to call Caleb and tell him congratulations. He had won again. But instead, I stayed. That night, I unrolled my sleeping bag in the least broken room. The floor creaked beneath me. Wind howled outside. I lay there staring at the wooden beams above me, thinking about every voice that had ever told me I wasn't enough. Father's silence when I showed him the short story I'd written in high school, the one my teacher said was exceptional, hadn't even looked up from his newspaper. He just turned to Caleb and asked about soccer, practice. That moment had cut deeper than I ever admitted, because silence is louder than rejection. My brother was the prodigy, the golden child. I was the other son, the one told to work harder, to be more practical, to aim for something realistic. And Rachel, she was supposed to be different. She said she loved me because I had a heart, because I wasn't like other men. But in the end, she wanted the same thing everyone else did. Status. And I didn't have it. The cabin creaked in the wind. I closed my eyes, trying to sleep. But I couldn't. Something about this place felt strange. Not haunted, not in the ghost story sense, but intentional. Like the cabin was hiding something. The next morning, I woke to the faint sound of snow dripping from the roof. The air inside was freezing. I could see my breath rise in thin clouds. I spent the day exploring. The kitchen was falling apart. Rusted sink, cracked counters. The bedroom looked untouched for years. A bed frame with no mattress, a closet half collapsed under its own weight. But then, I noticed something. Behind the kitchen stove, which was too heavy to move alone, there was a small gap in the wall. A faint draft was slipping through. I crouched down, shining my flashlight. It wasn't just a crack. It was a seam. A rectangular outline, hidden behind layers of wood and dust. My heart started to race. I grabbed a crowbar from my bag and began prying at the wood. Each pull echoed through the cabin like thunder. The boards cracked, splinters flying, until finally, one piece gave way. Behind it was a metal door. Small, rusted, locked with a heavy latch. I just stared. Why would there be a locked metal door inside? The wall of an old cabin in the middle of nowhere. I ran my fingers along the edges. There was a small engraving, letters barely visible beneath the rust. A. Arthur Hale. My father. My stomach dropped. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at that metal door, wondering what he had hidden here. Had he known I'd come? Had he wanted me to find it? By morning, I made up my mind. I was going to open it. The lock was old, but not impossible. After hours of trying with a screwdriver and a hammer, it finally snapped. The latch popped loose with a sharp click. The metal door creaked open. Behind it was a narrow space, like a hidden compartment, lined with plastic sheets and sealed boxes. Inside those boxes were documents. Stacks of them, files, ledgers, and beneath those, wrapped in oilcloth, was a small black case. I lifted it out, heart pounding, and placed it on the table. When I unzipped it, what I saw made me stagger back. Gold bars. Real gold. Dozens of them. My father, the man who left me a broken cabin, had hidden over $50 million. Worth of gold beneath the floorboards. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. Was this a test? A message? A cruel joke? And then it hit me. He knew. He knew Caleb would never look twice at an old cabin in Alaska. He knew the only one who would was me. All those years he'd pushed me, judged me, made me feel small. Maybe this was his way of forcing me to see what I was capable of. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Because alongside the gold, in that same case, was an envelope. My name written in his handwriting. Inside, a single line. If you found this, Ethan, you were ready. That was it. No explanation, no instructions, just those 6 words. I stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of my father's past, realizing that the man who had spent a lifetime breaking me had also left me the key to rebuild everything. But why? Why hide this fortune? Why leave it to me? And most of all, what did he mean by ready? I lifted one of the gold bars, its weight solid and cold in my hands. My reflection warped in its surface. Somewhere deep in my chest, something changed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten son anymore. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the loser. But as I stood in that silent cabin, one thought refused to leave my mind. If my father hid $50 million here, what else was he hiding? Because in the corner of that hidden room, behind the remaining boxes, I saw something else, something that didn't belong, a safe, and it was still locked. The numbers on the dial were worn off, as if someone had tried, and failed to open it. Whatever was inside, my father didn't want anyone to find. Not Caleb, not Rachel, not even me, unless I was ready. The wind howled outside, rattling the broken windows. The cabin seemed to breathe around me. Alive. Restless. I stared at that safe, feeling the weight of every choice that had brought me here. My father's tests, my brother's pride, Rachel's betrayal. All of it, leading to this. To a rotting cabin in the middle of nowhere, and a secret that could rewrite everything I thought I knew about my family. I reached out, touched the cold steel dial, and whispered into the empty air, "All right, Dad, I'm ready." The safe clicked once, then silence. What happened next would change my life and my family's legacy. Forever. They say rock bottom has a sound. For me, it was the wind howling through the cracks of a rotting cabin deep in Alaska, and the echo of my own breath as I realized there was no one within miles to hear me scream if the roof caved in. I thought I'd lost everything, my family, my fiancé, my dignity, but I was wrong. That night, I hadn't lost everything. I just stumbled onto the beginning of something far bigger than I could have ever imagined. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the cabin made me flinch, wondering if the next one would be the roof giving in. Every gust of wind rattled the broken window like a warning. I lay there in the dark, wrapped in a thin sleeping bag that smelled of dust and despair, staring up at the shadows shifting across the ceiling. That's when the doubts started to whisper. What if I made a mistake coming here? What if this place really was just garbage? Proof that I'd been the family disappointment all along. Morning came like a slap of ice. The fire I'd built had long died out, leaving the air sharp enough to sting my lungs. I stepped outside, boots crunching through the snow, and looked around. Just trees. Endless, towering trees. No neighbors, no roads, no sound but the wind tearing through the forest. Isolation. Complete and total. For a moment, I almost turned back. I could have sold the land for whatever scraps it was worth, flown back to New York, and vanished into the noise of the city. But then, I saw his face in my head. Caleb, my golden boy brother sipping champagne in his Manhattan mansion, probably laughing about how his loser brother got stuck with a shack in the middle of nowhere. And Rachel. Her words still sliced through me like a knife. Pathetic loser. She didn't just leave. She humiliated me. That anger kept me rooted to the frozen ground. If I left now, I'd prove them right. So I went back inside, determined to do something, anything, to take control of this nightmare. The cabin was a wreck. Furniture collapsed in corners, mold creeping along the walls, floorboards warped and split. but I started clearing it anyway. I threw out broken chairs, swept up decades of dirt, and patched cracks where the wind screamed through. Every swing of the broom, every nail I hammered was a strike against the ghosts of their voices. My father's disapproval, Caleb's smug laughter, Rachel's venom. Hours passed, but I couldn't stop. The work felt like penance, like purpose. Somewhere deep down, a voice kept whispering, "There has to be more to this. Maybe they didn't leave me this cabin by accident. Maybe this was a test, or maybe a secret." It happened late that afternoon. I dragged a moldy rug aside, coughing as dust filled the air. And then I saw it, a handle, a small iron ring embedded in the floorboards. I froze. My pulse started to hammer in my ears. Slowly, I crouched down, brushed away the dirt, and pulled. The wood groaned as a hidden panel lifted open, revealing a black hole beneath the cabin. A hidden cellar. The smell hit me first, damp, earthy, untouched for decades. I stared into that darkness, flashlight trembling in my hand. My breath fogged the air as I leaned closer. Wooden steps descended into the void, old but sturdy. I swallowed hard. "All right," I muttered to no one. "Let's see what kind of joke this is." Step by step, I went down. The deeper I went, the colder it got. The flashlight beam shook as it sliced through the dark. And then I saw them. Wooden crates. Dozens of them. Metal chests, some rusted shut, others still gleaming faintly beneath the dust. Everything was arranged with precision. This wasn't storage. It was a vault. My hands were shaking as I pried open the first crate. The wood cracked apart, and what I saw inside made my knees give out. Gold. Stacks of gold coins, dull with age but heavy and real. I lifted one and its weight nearly stole my breath. Beneath it, bundles wrapped in cloth. I tore one open. Rings, brooches, necklaces, jewels that shimmered like fire in the flashlight's glow. I ripped open another crate. More gold, another, silver bars. I stumbled back, my chest heaving. The air felt thinner, like the world had just shifted under me. All this time, I thought they'd left me nothing. But in reality, they'd left me everything. $50 million, maybe more, hidden beneath a rotting cabin in the middle of nowhere. My first thought wasn't joy. It was confusion. Why me? Why not Caleb, the favorite? The successful one, and then it hit me. They'd trusted me. Not the loud one, not the golden sun. Me. The one who listened, who endured, who kept standing no matter how many times life tried to knock him down. I sank to the cold stone floor, the flashlight clattering beside me. For the first time in years, I couldn't hold back the tears, but they weren't from pain. They were from something else. Relief. Vindication. All those years I thought I was invisible. A disappointment. I was wrong. My parents had seen me. Maybe they'd seen everything. Still, that realization came with fear. What if Caleb found out? What if Rachel caught wind of this? I knew what kind of people they were. Greedy, manipulative, selfish. This treasure wasn't just wealth. It was a target on my back. I forced myself to keep going, to look deeper. In the corner sat a massive leather trunk. It took both hands to pry it open. Inside were ledgers. Old, brittle, but meticulously organized. I flipped through the yellowed pages, my flashlight shaking as I read. Land deeds. Mining claims. Business accounts going back nearly 100 years. And one name appeared again and again. Elias Hale. My grandfather. I'd barely known him. My father rarely talked about him, just muttered that Elias was a hard man. But looking at these records, I realized he hadn't been just hard. He'd been strategic. He'd built something powerful, something meant to last generations. And somehow, through all the years and all the secrets, it had landed here, with me. I sat there for hours, flipping through page after page. Every number, every signature, every deal, it all pointed to one truth. The Hale family fortune wasn't gone. It had just been hidden, waiting for the one person they believed could protect it. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. The cabin felt different now. Not like a ruin, but like a fortress. A secret stronghold sitting on top of a legacy that could change everything. I promised myself, right then, I won't waste this. I won't let anyone take it from me. For 2 straight days, I worked nonstop. I cataloged every crate, counted every coin, noted every ledger entry. I nailed the trapdoor shut again and covered it with the same old rug. To anyone else, it would look like nothing more than a forgotten shack. But I knew better. Each nail I drove in wasn't just sealing wood, it was sealing my future, my power, my revenge. I cleaned the cabin, repaired the fireplace, patched the window. The place slowly came back to life. Every improvement made me stand a little taller. Every breath felt a little stronger. I wasn't the forgotten son anymore. And then I found the letter. It was tucked inside one of the ledgers, folded neatly, my name written across it in my mother's soft handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The paper was fragile, the ink faded, but the words hit me like a thunderclap. Ethan, if you are reading this, it means your father and I are gone. What we have left for you is not a mistake or a punishment. It is trust. Your father saw in Caleb boldness, but also recklessness. He saw pride in appearances, not substance. With you, he saw something deeper. Strength that doesn't shout, resilience. Heart. We know you will protect what we built. Forgive us if it ever seemed like we didn't believe in you. We always did. Your mother. I don't even remember dropping to my knees. The words blurred through tears I didn't realize I'd been holding back for years. Every cruel moment, every time my father ignored me, every time Caleb mocked me, every venomous word Rachel spat, all of it shattered in an instant, because in that moment, I knew the truth. I was the chosen one, not the flashy one, not the loud one, but the one they could trust. And suddenly, everything made sense. The tests, the distance, the silence. My father hadn't been cruel for nothing. He'd been preparing me. I pressed the letter to my chest and whispered into the dark. I'll make you proud. I promise. But peace didn't last long, because secrets like this, they don't stay buried forever. The news of the will had already spread through family friends, and it didn't take long before Caleb started asking questions. He called me one night, his voice sharp, arrogant, and cold. "Ethan," he said, "I've been hearing some interesting things about that cabin of yours." I froze, the phone heavy in my hand. His tone wasn't curious, it was calculating, and right then I knew. The storm was coming, because when greed meets blood, someone always gets burned. You ever get a call that makes your blood boil so fast it feels like the past you tried to bury suddenly claws its way back up? That's what it was like when I heard my brother's voice. "So, how's life in your little shack?" Caleb sneered through the phone. "Realized yet that Mom and Dad left you a pile of garbage while I'm living in their mansion?" He laughed, that slow, smug, echoing laugh that had haunted me since childhood. "Sell it, Ethan. Stop embarrassing yourself. Everyone knows you can't handle anything better." I didn't answer at first. My hand tightened around the phone. The fire in my chest roared, but my voice stayed calm. "I'm managing," I said quietly. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that beneath that rotting cabin floor, I had found something that would change everything. Gold, jewels, ledgers, a legacy buried so deep even the wind outside couldn't whisper about it. But Caleb didn't deserve to know. Not yet. He thought I was still that same broken man, the failure living in his shadow. So I let him believe it. I wanted him to, because power, real power, isn't about proving them wrong. It's about letting them talk while you build. A few weeks later, Rachel's message came in. "Ethan, I've been thinking. I overreacted. I miss you. Maybe we could talk about things again." Her words lit up my phone screen, but all I could see was her face the night she called me pathetic. Her voice sharp, venomous, slicing through what little pride I had left. I stared at that message for a long time, My thumb hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I almost replied. Then I deleted it. Just like that. She hadn't missed me. She'd heard whispers about money, and she wanted a piece of whatever she thought I had. But the truth was, she had no idea what I had found. Down in that cold, dark cellar beneath the cabin, beneath the years of dust and silence, I had discovered something far greater than wealth. My grandfather's ledgers told stories of mining claims, land rights, and fortunes hidden across the Alaskan wilderness. Timber, oil, gold. My family had built an empire generations ago, and somehow it had all been buried under this forgotten place. And now it was mine, not Caleb's, not the golden son who inherited the mansion and the applause, not the man who measured success in luxury cars and fake smiles. Me, the one they had laughed at, the one they thought was done. I remember that night vividly, sitting by the fireplace, the flickering glow painting shadows across the cabin walls. The letter from my mother rested on my lap, her handwriting delicate but firm. "Ethan," it began, "if you are reading this, it means your father and I are gone. What we've left for you is not a mistake. It is trust. Trust." That word hit me harder than any insult Caleb had ever thrown. She wrote that my father had seen in me what Caleb could never have: patience, quiet strength, and heart. "We knew," she wrote, "that you would protect this legacy, not squander it." As I read her words, I felt something inside me crack open. Years of resentment, doubt, and pain poured out all at once. Every time my father had dismissed me, every cruel smirk from Caleb, every word Rachel had used to cut me down. It all burned away in that single moment. I wasn't the failure anymore. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the one they had chosen. That night, as the fire popped and the cold wind howled outside, I whispered into the flames, "I'll protect this. I'll make it grow. You trusted me, and I won't fail you." For the first time in years, I felt whole. The bitterness that had poisoned me for so long began to fade. I didn't need Caleb's approval. I didn't need Rachel's apologies. I didn't even need my father's praise. I was standing on my own ground now, literally and figuratively. The next morning, I stepped outside into the freezing Alaskan air. The snow glistened like shards of glass beneath the pale sun. My breath fogged the air, and I looked at the forest stretching endlessly before me. This was mine. Not the gold, not just the land, but the choice. The choice to do something meaningful with it. From that day forward, I worked like a man possessed. I rebuilt the cabin, plank by plank, nail by nail. I patched the holes in the roof, fixed the broken window, cleared out the decay. Every swing of the hammer was a blow against every insult I'd ever swallowed. Every repaired board was a small victory over every failure I'd believed about myself. My father had once said I lacked drive. Caleb had called me weak. Rachel said I'd never be enough. But with every repair, every breath in that icy air, I proved them wrong. The cabin that once symbolized humiliation was becoming something else. A fortress. A home. Each night, I'd go back into that cellar, that secret heart of the mountain, and study the ledgers. I traced my grandfather's handwriting, his calculations, his maps. I saw how far back this legacy reached. It wasn't just money. It was vision. Elias Hale, my grandfather, had built something powerful, and my parents had chosen me to continue it. That realization changed everything. Meanwhile, Caleb's calls didn't stop. His voice messages came dripping with arrogance, every word like oil sliding off polished marble. "Enjoy your shack, Ethan. I'll be in Italy next month. Maybe I'll send you a postcard from my balcony." I'd listen to those messages sometimes, not out of anger, but almost amusement. He thought success was about balconies and expensive wine. But I'd learned the truth. Success was about building something that lasts, and mine would outlast him. Rachel tried again, too. Her next message came late at night. "I don't care about what your parents left," she said. "I just want you back." Her words made me laugh, not cruelly, but knowingly. She only came back when she thought there was something to gain. I deleted her message without hesitation. For the first time, I realized how powerful silence can be. No argument, no explanation, just silence. I turned my focus toward what mattered: protecting the legacy. Quietly, I started reaching out to people who could help me: experts in property law, historians familiar with Alaskan land claims, appraisers who could discreetly evaluate old artifacts, all under a false name. Every response I received confirmed it. This wasn't just a fortune. It was history. The gold and jewels were worth millions, but the mineral rights, the land deeds, those were worth far, far more, and suddenly the weight of it all came crashing down. This wasn't about greed anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about responsibility. If I mishandled this, I could lose it all. But if I treated it wisely, I could rebuild everything. My family had started generations ago, and that's when it clicked. My parents hadn't chosen me because I was stronger than Caleb. They'd chosen me because I was different. Because I would protect, not flaunt. Because I would build quietly, not boast loudly. Because I would carry the weight. That realization reshaped me. One night, as the fire burned low, I unfolded my mother's letter again. Her handwriting looked softer now, the paper more fragile under the flickering light. "We knew you would protect this legacy, not squander it." Those words echoed through the cabin. For years, I had chased approval, wanted my parents to say they were proud of me. I used to think I needed to hear it. Now, I realized, they had told me in the only way that mattered. They had trusted me with everything. That trust, that silent, unspoken belief, was the loudest declaration of love they could have ever given. The man who had arrived in Alaska, broken, humiliated, and hollow, was gone. The man sitting in that cabin now was someone new. I wasn't Caleb's shadow anymore. I wasn't Rachel's failure. I wasn't my father's disappointment. I was the heir. Not to money, but to meaning. When I finally left the cabin for a short trip back to New York, I carried myself differently. No more shrinking under their words. No more chasing their approval. I didn't tell Caleb what I had found. I didn't flaunt it. Let him believe whatever he wanted. Let him think he'd won. Because the truth, my truth, was something he'd never understand. I remember sitting on that plane, staring out the window as the snow-covered peaks disappeared beneath the clouds. A small smile crept across my face. Rachel would never hear the truth from me. Neither would Caleb, because sometimes silence is the greatest revenge of all. That cabin, the same one I once thought was a punishment, had become a gift. A mirror, a test. It broke me down so it could rebuild me into the man I was meant to be. The gold, the ledgers, the land rights, those were valuable. But the real treasure was what I discovered inside myself. That broken cabin in the middle of nowhere taught me more about strength, patience, and trust than any mansion ever could. And sometimes, what looks like rejection is actually trust in disguise. Sometimes the places we think are ruins are actually foundations. The world might see me as the man who got the scraps. But the truth, I was the one who inherited the soul of the family. And as I stood in the doorway of that cabin one last time, watching the first snow of winter fall silently over the forest, I realized something. The story wasn't over. In fact, it had only just begun. Because deep beneath that cabin, beneath the floorboards and the frost, I had found something else. Something I hadn't told anyone about yet. And what I discovered there would change everything I thought I knew about my family, my past, and the price of trust.